Right.
And then he brings out the Bluegrass Band, because I think they were in New York
Right.
that night or the night before, the night after,
Sure.
whatever it was,
Right.
doing one of the late night shows.
Right.
So from that standpoint, it was like, oh, well, this is kind of a treat because he normally doesn't do this during his live show.
Right.
So we're going to see it live. So from that standpoint, it was kind of cool because we were seeing something unique and we weren't going to see again. But, oh, man, did it kill the pace of the show.
Oh, totally.
I mean, he was just, like I said, on fire, banging song after song, and then it just grinds to a halt.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, the musicians were good at what they were doing, but it killed the pace of the show. And then they were gone, and then the band came back on, and they started up again, but it wasn't quite the same. So, yeah, another interesting chapter in the career of David Lee Roth.
Yeah, and he also did Jamie's Crying. And I thought Roth did a better on this one. This song is brought down a bit. It's a little slower, bluesier version with banjo and fiddle and washboard in there.
She saw the look in his eyes. She knew better. He wanted her tonight, and it was now or never. It made her feel so sad. Oh, Jamie's crying. Oh, Jamie's crying.
Dave sounds good. He handles it well. He blends in here and embraces the new version. And the interpretation is very adventurous, and it's proof that the song is well written because it really comes through strong. The band really picks up the pace about 4 minutes in. It's amazing musicianship here with the John Jorgensen band. But I tell you, it got ripped to shreds. Opie and Anthony they were playing it on the air and saying, "What happened?" And he goes, "When did David Lee Roth become clueless? Who is gonna buy this? Do you think that the Van Halen brothers are home watching this, laughing their ass off?"
I was going to say, by the way, John Jorgensen is a phenomenal guitarist.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Very, especially acoustic guitarist.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that guy is up there.
Yeah.
I mean, top of his game. Now, he didn't actually play live with Dave on any of these songs. No. But as far as the studio version, I mean, I'll never say anything bad about John Jorgensen, also primarily because he played with Michael Nesmith. So there's your Van Halen Monkeys connection right there.
Right, exactly.
Name the guy who played solo with a member of either band.
Right.
But that guy really is that good.
Totally.
So
but
anyway.
Yeah, so luckily after this, like Dave said, Dave did a tour, but then he ended up back in Van Halen in 2007 in September, and then they went on their whole run again up. So they, went on to, do their biggest tour ever, and then onto another album and tour and a live album and tour, and now, he's back in Vegas. But it's funny, one thing he's doing while promoting this Vegas show is very much screaming, "This is a rock show. This is not the Mambo Slammers." So he still knows that he got burned hard there. So he is screaming up and down, "This is Van Halen, Van Halen." He's really throwing
he's pushing
the
Van
Halen thing in there hard. So,
mm-hmm.
So that wraps up the dark days of David Lee Roth, and we are on to our interview with drummer Ron Wikso, who performed with Roth during the You Filthy Little Mouth tour, and we speak with him, and that's all coming up next. Take a listen.
Being on stage is great. It's like being in the jungle, and you hear all the noise and the volume, and the people are all screaming, and there's smoke in the air, and people are throwing stuff up on stage. They throw, scarves and brassieres, and the keys to their house and the keys to their car, and everything comes up on stage. It's a big mess. It looks just like my hotel room, and it gets really hot. reaches about 110 degrees Fahrenheit by about the second song, and you're out of wind, and you kind of limp, or you barely make it to the next song, you know, and that's only the second song. You feel like an animal, man. You feel like it's real primal, has great therapeutic value, you know. I have a good time. That's why I got this job.
Hey folks, I'd like to introduce you to the Classic Rock Album by Album podcast. Welcome to the Classic Rock Album by Album podcast, where no stone is left unturned in the show's epic quest to review and dissect every single rock album ever made. Join self-proclaimed rock authorities Chris Carson and Lee Bowie on their epic journey to uncover the true classics. You can find the Classic Rock Album by Album podcast wherever podcasts can be found, including Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Our website address is classicrockalbumbyalbum.libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN.com. And we can be reached on Facebook at fb.me/Classic Rock Album by Album. See you soon from the Classic Rock Album by Album podcast.
This is Rock'em Sock'em Diamond David Lee Roth here, live in front of your naked steaming ears, and you're listening to Dave and Dave Unchained, baby.
Need a laugh? Check out the Funny How Comedy Podcast, which focuses on upbeat conversations with legendary comedians. It's free on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out on Facebook at Funny How Comedy Podcast, on Twitter at Funny How Podcast, on Instagram at Funny How Comedy Podcast, or email us at funnyhowcomedypodcast@gmail.com.
Rock bands are very fragile units. They're very fragile mechanisms. You know, rock bands are like dogs who chase cars. You know, they make a lot of noise, but they don't get a lot of attention, but they don't last too long. So we'll see what happens with Van Halen.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have an incredible guest this evening. He is a long-standing rock and roll drummer who played with David Lee Roth in the 90s, Mr. Ron Wikso. Hey, Ron, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. How are you doing?
Awesome, man. It's great to have you on. And Ron, I just wanted to ask you, where are you originally from?
I grew up on Long Island.
And you grew up where on Long Island?
I graduated from East Islip High School, the same high school as Boomer Esiason.
Wow, that's great. That's awesome. And would you like growing up on Long Island? Was it fun?
Oh, yeah. It was cool, you know. I had what I would call a pretty normal, nice, fun childhood, you know. I lived on the South Shore, you know. We went to the beach a lot, you know, the Fire Island and all that stuff. I actually was a lifeguard in Ocean Beach for a few summers.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So just to start off, I want to ask you, did you have bands growing up?
I mean, yeah, you know, I played in, you know, whatever local stuff in high school. And when I was 17, when I graduated high school, I went to college in Boston at Berklee College of Music.
Okay, great.
And I was only there for 2 semesters. Actually, one of the guys I played in Foreigner with, I met when I was there, Tom Gimbel. But then I came back to New York, and then I wound up doing a bunch of things, like mostly like freelancing. So like I would do like weddings and bar mitzvahs and that sort of thing, and different club gigs around, you know, in New York or in the tri-state area, you know, Connecticut, New Jersey. And then I wound up doing a gig in the Caribbean at a restaurant for like 4 months. And then I did a cruise ship gig, and I did a top 40 band gig that went all over, like, you know, Pennsylvania and Ohio and places like that. Just stuff to play and make money and get experience. You know, I was late teens, early 20s for most of that time. And then after I did the cruise ship gig, I decided to move to California because it was easier to be a starving musician when the weather was warm, you know. I didn't need a coat.
Sure, absolutely. And so how did you initially get involved with Dave?
Greg Bissonette recommended me for Dave. You know, Greg was the drummer, you know, his first solo band that, you know, did Yankee Rose and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And I knew Greg, I don't know, a number of years before that, just playing around L.A., and, you know, we knew a lot of the same people. I don't know the whole story, but I think that Dave had tried a couple of guys after he made the Your Filthy Little Mouth album. And then, I don't know, for whatever reason, he didn't work out or he didn't like him or whatever. I don't know exactly what happened. But then Greg recommended me for it. I went to Dave's house and auditioned. It was me and at that time it was Terry Kilgore and Jamie Hunting was the bass player.
Right.
And just the three of us played in this room down in the basement at Dave's house. And unbeknownst to me, Dave was listening. I just didn't know. He was upstairs listening. He didn't want to be in the room for some reason. I don't know why.
Right.
But then he came down after we played a few songs and, so you want the gig or whatever, whatever he said. So then I joined his band. That was January of 94.
Wow. Okay, great. So you started the whole tour for Your Filthy Little Mouth.
Yeah, I did the whole thing. When I first joined the band, it was kind of bizarre. It was like, I think I started rehearsals with the band like a day or two before the big Northridge earthquake. And so that kind of put a damper on things for a few days. And then at that time, I was also a member of a band called The Storm, which was with two of the guys from Journey, Greg Raleigh and Ross Valerie. I actually replaced Steve Smith in that band. And we had a few gigs, like 5 gigs still booked right in that month up, and they were all in Northern California.
Right.
So I wound up like rehearsing with Dave in the day, and then my drum tech would drop me off at Burbank Airport, and I'd fly up to Northern California, and I'd do this gig. And then the next morning I'd get back on a plane and fly back to L.A. and go to Dave's house for rehearsal.
Wow.
Like 5 times. It was crazy.
That's incredible. So where you were rehearsing with Dave is where Van Halen used to rehearse back in the day in Dave's basement. Were you aware of that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so what was the scene like down there? What did it look like?
It was just a basement. It's a basement in a very large, old, like early 1900s kind of mansion, It was,
right.
Dave's dad was pretty successful eye surgeon. I think he was in charge of coming up with radial keratotomy or something like that. And the house that they lived in, which I assume he still has, I don't know.
Yeah, but, he does.
I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, the story was that it was built for the head of Texaco in 1907 or some crazy thing like that.
Interesting. So it was just unfinished, like a slate basement.
I think one room was like a big vault or something, as I recall.
Okay.
Yeah, there were just rooms. He had a lot of equipment in there. There was probably, 3 or 4 rooms that I remember. One room, the tour production guys were using that as like an office sort of headquarters. And
right.
There was a small room. We were in a pretty small room. It's just the 3 guys and Dave to start with. And then after a week or two, he realized that we really needed a keyboard, so we got Brett Tuggle to come back and join the band.
Interesting. So tell me, where did you come? What band were you in prior? Was it The Storm? That was the band you were in prior?
Immediately prior to joining Dave, yeah, I was in The Storm, and before that, I was with Cher for a few years.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So in terms of working with Dave, what was it like? Was it intimidating when you met him, or was it relaxed and casual, or?
I don't really get starstruck.
Right.
I mean, I was a big fan of Van Halen. I loved all the music and everything, so all that was great.
Right.
And Dave's a character. I'm sure you realize that. Everybody realizes that.
Oh, I have met him, hung out with him, I've interviewed him. Yeah, he's quite a character.
It takes a little getting used to. He's very different than just your average guy.
Right.
He likes to hold court and tell stories and tell jokes, and He's a character, but it was great, playing those songs. I mean, holy crap, and playing Panama and Jump and all that stuff with him. He's the voice. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So, was he what you expected? Was he pretty much what you thought he was like?
I didn't really have any preconceived notion. I really wasn't sure what to expect, and nobody gave me any warnings or anything. Some of it was challenging, and but the guys in the band were great. Terry Kilgore only lasted for a couple months. He and Dave had grown up together, but Terry he didn't really dig the road, and he was butting heads with Dave or whatever. And so he played with us through Japan, which was, if I remember right, it was like April of that year. And then when we flew over to England, Rocket Rashad replaced him, and he did the rest of the tour.
Right.
But it was a great bunch of guys to play with, and playing those songs was was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Obviously, you know, Terry has a long history with Dave, so could you tell that there was a long history between them?
Oh, yeah, I knew. Yeah, he talked about it. They've known each other since like junior high or something like that.
Wow. Did they have good